Ever since Plato wrote about the allegory of Atlantis, humanity has been fascinated with the possibility of the discovery of a thriving underwater civilization. Fancy joining me on a trip to a few historic underwater sites? Let's see what we can find out about ancient civilizations. The first one on our list is what is being called the underwater Stonehenge. Scientists have recently discovered a mysterious pile of cairns that stretch for miles under the shimmering waters of Lake Constance at the borders of Switzerland, Germany, and Austria. Archaeologists began to explore the site back in 2015, and they haven't been able to understand yet what it was actually used for. What they do know is that there is a 12-mile line of 170 human-made stone cairns under Lake Constance. Scientists say this was most likely the result of a combined work of several villages. The cairn site was probably used for some collective purpose. The formations are huge. Some of them are several dozen feet wide. The most amazing discovery so far is that the site dates back to around 5,500 years ago. Now, what were we humans doing back then? We were living in the prime years of the so-called Stone Age. We were beginning to make artifacts from stone and use them to hunt and eat. Can you imagine what a knife and fork might have looked like back in those days? It's no coincidence that scientists call this site the underwater Stonehenge, though. Both sites are believed to have been built around the same period of time. You see, Stonehenge dates back to around 3100 BCE. Both sites carry the distinct characteristic of stone monuments built in a circle. Not to mention the fact that scientists also haven't figured out why on earth our early ancestors would feel the need to build a monument such as Stonehenge. Well, the mystery of Lake Constance hasn't been solved yet. Who were the Neolithic people from this area? And for what purpose did they go through such an amount of work and effort to build this huge stone site? Next, we're taking you on a tour of the Ryukyu Islands just off the coast of Japan. You're diving deep down to an archaeological site. But I should warn you, the waters of the Pacific Ocean are far from smooth. It doesn't take long before you see a huge structure, thanks to the sunlight shining down on the seabed. At first, it looks like Machu Picchu's ruins located across the globe in Peru. As you approach the site, you slowly figure out its forms. A pyramid-shaped structure, arches, staircases. It's something that could have easily been a palace or a castle. Could this be a sign of human activity? What you've just seen is known today as the Yonaguni Monument. It also goes by the name of Japan's Atlantis. The entire monument is about the size of 5 soccer fields and the height of a 5-story building. Its most surprising feature is its expanse of terraces. Explorers and scientists believe that Yonaguni might be 10,000 years old. But whether it's a human-made structure or a natural formation is still under debate. For Japan's top marine geologist, Professor Masaki Kimura, Yonaguni is the heritage of a lost civilization. Kimura has dived to the bottom of the ocean to explore the ruins over 100 times over the past 10 years. According to him, there are clear signs of human activity down there. On the monument's surface, there is a triangle-shaped concave that is a historical symbol of water fountains in the region. There's also a giant turtle carved on the eastern side of the structure. And, according to Kimura, turtles have an important cultural meaning. Several pieces of stone tools have been recovered from the site. Their estimated age is around 10,000 years. However, not all scientists support this theory. For many, Yonaguni is the result of thousands of years of erosion. The fact that the monument is composed of one massive rock leads them to believe it's not human-made. The defined edges and flat surfaces resemble a natural formation in Northern Ireland, known as the Giant's Causeway. The basalt columns look like the ruins of a palace, but they're actually the result of volcanic activity in the region. Now, you're flying to the coast of Greece, 4 hours away from Athens. More specifically, you're in the Peloponnese Peninsula. You dust off an old snorkel and head for a free dive on a bright sunny day. Sometime into the dive, you start noticing patterns on a seabed. 13 feet below the surface, outlines of familiar objects start to appear, one by one. As you continue swimming, what looks like the outline of an entire city emerges in front of your eyes. Are you wondering how water could have taken the whole city? Rocks are perfectly aligned into what appears to be the foundation of a building. This is Pavlopetri, an ancient city you've probably heard about for the first time. It was discovered by Nicholas Fleming, a British oceanographer, when he was on vacation in Greece. He had heard rumors about Pavlopetri's existence and indeed found several artifacts on the seafloor. He went back to the area a year later with the team. They found a site filled with pots, storage vessels, and tools. A kernstone, for instance, is a tool used for grinding grains and turning them into flour. Multiple amphoras indicate that this settlement dates back to the Bronze Age, 5,500 years ago, when people started living in towns. The settlement is believed to have existed for over 2,400 years. Today, Pavlopetri is considered the oldest submerged town ever discovered, and what's impressive is that it wasn't a simple village. It was a vibrant port city with stone buildings, a marketplace, streets, and even squares. The next stop on our voyage is one of today's most famous underwater cities that has been turned into an archaeological park. The city of Port Royal in Jamaica exists only below the surface, but in 1692 it was one of the wealthiest cities in the Western Hemisphere. Port Royal was the center of the British Empire at the time and an important trade city that attracted people from all over the region. It was also home to real-life pirates of the Caribbean. On the morning of June 7, 1692, the people of Port Royal met a different fate than they had probably expected. The city woke up shaking. People were thrown out of their beds by the power of a massive earthquake, ranking 7.5 on a Richter scale. One survivor said he had seen Earth opening up and swallowing the whole town. What he said could be true, as the city was mainly built on sand. The ground swallowed buildings, roads, you name it. Geysers erupted, and finally, waves as big as 10-story buildings hit the city. About 33 acres of the city disappeared under the water. Amazingly, most of its 17th century remains are still in good condition under 40 feet of water. Archaeologists have found taverns, storage rooms, kitchens, and recreational buildings used for diverse purposes. You can also see a grand lion statue, a submerged bridge, and many picturesque arches. Of course, I saved the best for last: India. Just off its coast lies another sunken marvel. A site known as the Lost City of Cambay is located in the Gulf with a similar name. It remained undiscovered until 2001, when the National Institute of Ocean Technology made a routine water assessment. With the help of sonar technology, which sends a wave sound to the bottom of the sea, they found something far beneath the surface. Images showed well-defined geometric shapes spread along a 5-mile stretch. The remains date to more than 9,500 years ago, meaning this civilization was lost at around the end of the Ice Age. Debris recovered from the site included construction material, pottery, beads, sculptures, and even bones. Scientists argue whether these artifacts are indeed from the site, but if they truly are, then the lost city of Cambay might be the oldest civilization in the world. The Easter Island giant heads are so popular that they even have their own emoji. Their true meaning has been a mystery for hundreds of years. But it looks like we at least know how they were built and transported to their permanent location. The Moai statues consist of 3 parts: a large yellow body, a red hat or top knot, and white inset eyes with a coral iris. Around 1,000 of them were created. The main bodies of most of the statues were made out of volcanic tuff from a local quarry in what used to be a volcano. The material is easy to carve, but not so easy to transport. That's probably why researchers found over 300 unfinished moai back in the quarry. The rest of them stand in various locations, facing the villages as if watching over the locals. So, it looks like the statues were carved lying on their backs. Then, their creators detached them from the rock, moved them down slope, and set them in a vertical position to finish the work. Once it was done, it was time to get the statue to its platform. Now, if you've ever moved houses, you know how physically hard it is. So, imagine having to move a statue that is about half as heavy as a house without a car or any modern equipment for a distance of 3 miles. The locals must have invented some original way of doing it, and scientists tried to recreate it to guess what it was. They tried pulling moai replicas on wooden sleds. They thought someone could have used palm trees for that purpose, but this theory has been debunked. The most successful experiment so far was wielding ropes to rock the statue down the road in a standing position. This method sounds real because the local Rapa Nui legends mention that the moai walked from the quarry. And, of course, they needed a good road to get there. In the early 20th century, researcher Catherine Rutledge identified an 800-year-old road network on the island. It was a bunch of pathways around 15 feet wide going from the quarry. She thought that those roads were ceremonial and not built just for the statues. She wasn't a famous scientist back then, so others mostly ignored the theory. Several decades later, famous Norwegian adventurer and archaeologist Thor Heyerdahl published his theory. He mentioned that the roads were built exclusively to transport the moai, and some of the statues were dropped along the roads for some reason. But in 2010, researchers found that the statues weren't randomly dropped. They actually reached their final destinations as they were all set on hidden platforms. Plus, the road floor was U-shaped, so pulling massive statues along them wouldn't be easy. You can still find roughly 15.5 miles of these roads on the island and see them from satellite images. And it looks like Catherine Rutledge was right about them. The roads were probably built for pilgrims to a sacred volcano, and the moai standing by them were sort of signposts. Halfway across the world in southern England lies another mystery made of stone, a massive sound illusion, a symbol of unity, a burial ground, or more. Scientists are still debating the purpose of Stonehenge. It took Neolithic builders around 1,500 years to construct this beauty made of roughly 100 stones standing upright in a circle. Millions of tourists come to see it every year, and heritage protectors were worried about the modern road snaking close to the landmark. That modern road is now sunk into the ground below the grass level. And even though archaeologists assumed they could find an older road under it, they didn't have any high hopes. But when they took off a layer of asphalt, they noticed 2 parallel ditches that were nearly perpendicular to the road. The ditches connected the shortened sections of the avenue. That's what the archaeologists call the ancient pathway leading up to Stonehenge. It proves that the ancient people used to visit the monument for their purposes, and probably some ceremonies. Another interesting find during a dry summer was 3 dry patch marks within the stone circle. It looks like they were left there by 3 massive boulders. So Stonehenge could have been a full circle once. In 2021, archaeologists found a Roman road submerged in the Venetian lagoon. The fact that it runs there on the bottom for nearly 4,000 feet is proof that the Romans were here before sea levels rose and flooded the area. It supports the theory that there was an important settlement here centuries before Venice was founded at the spot in the 5th century CE. The ancient Romans were great at many things, and one of them was building roads. And it looks like they weren't afraid to work on the trickiest terrain. Scans have shown that the ancient road was built right on the beach, and it requires some serious skills. Imagine a village from over 1,000 years ago frozen in time. There's still half-eaten food on the tables and personal things left in a rush. It's all preserved so well because it's covered by volcanic ash. Researchers found this village in 2011 in modern-day El Salvador. They believe there was a mass celebration in a Maya village called Seren over 1,400 years ago. The whole village was there, preparing the main temple for a ritual when a nearby volcano erupted. The 200-plus residents had no time to rush back to their homes. To save their lives, they had to flee the plaza and run south on a raised road called Cambay. They managed to escape from the plumes of volcanic ash. In addition to being a superhero and saving all the people, the road had another cool feature. All Cambay roads had an outer layer of stones. But this one was made of ash. Ironic, isn't it? It proves that the Maya people didn't only use stones to build their roads. Archaeologists discovered several coins in Jerusalem when they were excavating an old street. When they saw the minting dates, they realized the road was built when Pontius Pilate was the Roman governor of Judea. Since he was the local ruler, it's almost clear that he gave the order to build the road. The pilgrims most likely used this road to reach the Temple Mount for worship. The pathway, which was laid with over 10,000 tons of limestone, was almost as broad as a London bus is long. It had been there for 2,000 years. It's not common that you find such a luxurious road, and it's not clear why a Roman governor would spend so much money on the road. It was probably his attempt to make the city's population like him. Plus, it was a great way to show he had both money and influence. The Old North Trail is an ancient highway that the inhabitants of North America used for 10,000 years, first on foot, then with dogs, and finally with horses. The first travelers moved around the continent down its paths for thousands of miles long before the first Europeans arrived, and even during the last ice age. They used it to carry trade goods, visit relatives, find a mate, or just explore. Researchers keep finding evidence that the stories and legends of the Blackfoot Indians about this trail are real. And it could be even the road that served one of the most massive human migrations. The people who crossed from Asia on the Bering Land Bridge about 15,000 years ago and settled in North America might have used the ice-free corridor along the Rockies, which later became a part of the trail. The Nakasendo Highway was built in the 17th century during the Edo period of Japanese history to link Kyoto and Tokyo. The 310-mile-long road runs across mountain ranges and down onto the plain. It was one of the 5 main roads used by the feudal lords and their families to travel to the capital. There were 69 post stations on the route where travelers could stay overnight. The road was built for horses and pedestrians, as the Japanese didn't use carts. You can still walk parts of the route.
Hey, if you think Stonehenge is one of the oldest stone monuments ever, well, let me introduce you to Göbekli Tepe. Buckle up, we gotta travel to Turkey to meet this really old guy. Yeah, he's too old to travel. Jokes aside, Göbekli Tepe, an archaeological site located in southeastern Turkey that dates back to the Neolithic period around 10,000 BCE. It's considered to be one of the oldest and most significant archaeological discoveries in recent times. The site consists of a series of circular and rectangular structures made of stone pillars. Yeah, it does look like its younger brother Stonehenge. Some of those pillars are decorated with intricate carvings of animals and other symbols. Now, you maybe wonder, hey, why on earth did they make such a fascinating building? What was its purpose? Sorry, I got no answer for that. The purpose of the site is still unknown, but it is believed to have been a ceremonial center for the ancient people who lived in the area. The discovery of Göbekli Tepe has challenged long-held beliefs about the development of human civilization, as it suggests that complex societies may have emerged much earlier than previously thought. Okay, pack your stuff, our travel's just started. Next destination, Masada. It's an ancient fortress located in Israel on a plateau overlooking the Dead Sea. Hey, look at that view, spectacular, huh? It was built by King Herod the Great in the 1st century BCE, and it was very smartly built. Within the fortress, there were various facilities such as storehouses, barracks, a palace, and a set of cisterns capable of holding approximately 40,000 cubic meters of rainwater. People living there believed that the collected runoff from a single day's rainfall could provide sustenance for over 1,000 individuals for a period of 2 to 3 years. Access to the fortress was limited to 3 steep and winding paths leading up to fortified gates. Still, at one point, the fortress was occupied by people who had fled Jerusalem after the city was captured by the Romans. They held out against the invaders for several months, but eventually they were defeated. But these guys didn't surrender. The story of Masada has become a symbol of resistance and bravery. Today, Masada is a popular tourist attraction and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The next flight is going to be short. We're popping over to Egypt to see the Karnak Temple complex. It's a vast ancient Egyptian temple complex located in the city of Luxor, Egypt. It was built over a period of 2,000 years and covers an area of more than 200 acres. The complex is dedicated to the worship of the deity Amun-Ra. Wait a minute, that should be Amun-Ra, and it was one of the most important religious centers in ancient Egypt. The Karnak Temple consists of several temples, chapels, and other buildings, including the Great Temple of Amun, the Temple of Khonsu, and the Temple of Ptah. Ptah! The Great Temple of Amun is the largest and most impressive temple in the complex, with massive columns, statues, and other decorations. One of the most famous features of the Karnak Temple complex is the Avenue of Sphinxes, which is a long avenue lined with Sphinx statues that leads from the entrance of the complex to the Great Temple of Amun. Another notable feature is the Hypostyle Hall, which is a massive hall with 134 columns that are over 70 feet high. The Karnak Temple complex is a popular tourist attraction and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's considered one of the most important archaeological sites in Egypt and provides a fascinating glimpse into the religion and culture of ancient Egypt. Hey, we can't hop on the next flight and leave Egypt until we see the Pyramid of Djoser. It has another name, by the way. It's also known as the Step Pyramid. This ancient Egyptian site is located in Saqqara. It was built during the 27th century BCE for the pharaoh Djoser by his architect Imhotep, who is considered one of the most important figures in Egyptian history. People believe this pyramid is the first monumental structure built entirely of stone and is an important example of early Egyptian architecture. The pyramid originally stood at 203 feet tall and was surrounded by a complex of buildings and courtyards. It was constructed in 6 layers, each smaller than the one below it, giving it the distinctive step-like appearance. The pyramid was used as a burial place for Pharaoh Djoser and was surrounded by a vast necropolis that contained the tombs of many other important officials. The Grateful Dead? The Pyramid of Djoser has several renovations and additions over the centuries, including the addition of a limestone casing that covered the original step structure. However, much of the pyramid was destroyed over time, and today only the central core remains. Despite this, it remains an important archaeological site and a popular tourist attraction in Egypt. Alrighty, we're ready to move on. There's one more pretty recent discovery we gotta see today. The Tower of Jericho was only discovered during excavations in the 1950s and 60s. It's an ancient stone tower located in the city of Jericho in the West Bank. Just like Göbekli Tepe, this one is believed to be one of the oldest stone structures in the world, dating back to approximately 8000 BCE. The tower stands at over 28 feet tall. It's made up of two main sections, an inner tower and an outer tower, which are connected by a series of stairs. The purpose of the Tower of Jericho is not entirely clear, but it is believed to have served as a defensive structure or a watchtower. It may have also had religious significance, as it was located near a sacred spring. The Tower of Jericho is a significant archaeological site and has provided valuable insights into the early history of human civilization. It's open to visitors and is a popular destination for tourists interested in ancient history. Now, this ancient site even got attention from Netflix, and they made a movie where the action takes place in Mohenjo-Daro. This site was a major center of the Indus Valley civilization in present-day Pakistan. Mohenjo-Daro was one of the largest cities of the ancient world, with a population estimated to have been around 40,000 in its peak. Trust me, that must have been a crazy megalopolis back then. The city was notable for its advanced urban planning, with sophisticated drainage and sanitation systems, and its impressive architecture, including the Great Bath and the Granary. Mohenjo-Daro was abandoned around 1900 BCE, and its ruins were only rediscovered in the 1920s. Today, it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and an important archaeological site for the study of ancient South Asian civilization. We're heading to a teeny-tiny country that has quite an impressive history. Welcome to Malta. The Garni Temples are a Neolithic site located on the Mediterranean island of Gozo. They're probably one of the oldest freestanding structures in the world, dating back to around 3600 to 3200 BCE. The temples consist of two megalithic structures, each with multiple rooms and altars. The name Gigantia means giant tower in Maltese, as people believe that only giants could have built such massive structures. The temples are believed to have been used for religious purposes and are considered to be an important example of prehistoric architecture. They were added to the UNESCO World Heritage List in 1980. Well, you must be pretty tired, but there's one more place we gotta visit today. Our plane is already landing in Armenia, and we're here to see the Temple of Garni. Look, this one is well preserved. This temple dates back to the 1st century CE. It was built by King Tiridates I as a dedication to the sun deity Mir. Sadly, the temple was destroyed in the 17th century during an earthquake, which is quite a common thing for this area, but it was later reconstructed in the 20th century. Today, it's a popular tourist attraction and is also listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
The majority of us have believed for a really long time that Stonehenge, one of the most iconic monuments in the world, was an ancient calendar because of its alignment with the summer and winter solstices. But no one could figure out how it really worked. Now, a team of researchers have come out with another study. It turns out that Stonehenge could have functioned like the solar calendar. It's a similar principle to the solar calendar ancient Egyptians used to have, the one based on a year composed of 365.25 days. Each of the stones from this big mysterious sarsen circle represented one day within a month. Sarsens are what we call these large boulders. It's actually a perpetual calendar, where people could track every winter solstice sunset. That way, those who lived near Stonehenge, which is today Wiltshire, UK, could keep track of the days and months of the year. We all now understand this mysterious calendar system because of this interesting discovery in 2020. The team has identified the source of 50 of the 52 sarsens that make up the iconic stone circle we all know about. They analyzed the chemical composition of these sarsens and traced their origins to the West Woods in Wiltshire, which is about 15 miles away from the monument. Not only did these 50 sarsens come from the same source, but they were also placed in their current position at approximately the same time. They make the outer circle of Stonehenge, together with a horseshoe-shaped inner ring. Near the center of the monument, there are smaller rocks, known as bluestones. The team traced the origins of the bluestones all the way to Wales. They also discovered that the sarsens share a common chemistry, over 99% silica with trace elements. Two sarsens were different from each other and also different from the main cluster. These sarsens were arranged in 3 different formations at Stonehenge. 30 of them formed this huge stone circle that dominates the monument. 4 station stones ended up in a rectangular formation outside the circle, while the rest, located inside the stone circle, were constructed into 5 trilithons. A trilithon is when you have 2 vertical stones with a horizontal lintel at the top. 30, 5, and 4 are pretty interesting numbers in the context of this calendar system. The 30 uprights that are spread around the main sarsen ring could represent days of the month. If you multiply that by 12, you get 360. Add on 5 more, those from the central trilithons, and the result is 365. And to really adjust the calendar to match a solar year, you need to add 1 extra leap day for every 4 years, right? The team believes the ancient people used the 4 station stones to keep track of this part. So, in this system, they paired the summer and winter solstice every year with the same pair of stones. Ancient people started building Stonehenge about 5,000 years ago, and it took more than 1,000 years to finish the work. But the Stonehenge you see today is not the complete, original version from the beginning. People have broken and taken away many of its old bluestones and sarsens. The entire structure also changed over time since there were generations and generations, 180 of them to be precise, that passed since the beginning of Stonehenge, who would participate in the building and rebuilding of it. People created Stonehenge in 4 stages. They first built a circular enclosure that stretched over 330 feet, 100 meters, in diameter and went around 56 pits. A high bank flanks the ditch of the enclosure, while there's a low bank on the outside. Some theories even say that this part was some form of a communal cemetery. Later, in the second stage, builders added a horseshoe of sarsen trilithons. In the third stage, they constructed a ceremonial avenue that was nearly 2 miles long. It possibly traced the path of the bluestones. People moved from the Aubrey holes to the Q&R holes, a double arc that these bluestones have been arranged into. At this stage, builders also reorganized the entrance stones and recut the main enclosure ditch. During the fourth stage, the stones were broken and builders etched carvings into the sarsens. Later, the bluestones ended up being modified again. Builders didn't leave any written records about how they managed to drag these heavy stones to the site and get them to stand so perfectly upright. But there are theories that say their techniques were more closely associated with woodwork than masonry. They made mortise holes and protruding tenons because they wanted to slot these stones together, and they used tongue and groove joints to do that. When they dug the hole for the stones, they placed timber poles at the back of the holes that were used as brace support. Then, they moved the stone into a position and hauled it upward with ropes. They packed rubble into the hole to make sure the stone stayed in place. A pre-industrial farming society put this fascinating monument together using only tools made of stone and bone. Not even the wheel had been invented yet. This unusual formation is also known as ringing rocks. The stones you can see at Stonehenge have some pretty odd acoustic properties. When you strike them, they produce a loud clanging sound. That could be one of the reasons why people bothered to transport them over such a long distance in the first place. In some ancient cultures, people believed that these rocks contained healing powers. It's a really popular location that attracts over 1 million visitors a year. When it first opened to the public, visitors were allowed to walk among the stones. They could even climb on them, as there weren't any restrictions. Until the 19th century, visitors would regularly chip off pieces of the rock to take them home as souvenirs. They would also engrave their initials into the stones. They camped within the circle and dug fire pits, not realizing that the digging pits could seriously undermine the stability of the entire monument. Over time, visitors have encountered more and more restrictions until the monument was finally roped off in 1997 because of the serious erosion of the stones. That means if you want to visit, you can only view it from a distance unless you want to pay extra for the stone circle experience, which can be arranged outside of normal visiting hours. Stonehenge originally had two entrances that led into the enclosure. There was a wide one to the northeast and one that was a bit smaller and located on the southern side. If you look at it today, you can see there are many more gaps. This is mostly because of tracks made later that once crossed the monument. The ground within Stonehenge has been severely disturbed, and it wasn't just about random visitors digging fire pits. There was a group of people who dug a large deep hole within the stone circle in the 17th century because they were looking for treasure. Then there was Charles Darwin, who also did some digging because he was studying earthworms in the area. He wanted to know how these worms could impact objects in the soil over time. He observed how a fallen stone there had sunk deeper into the ground and realized it was happening because of the activities of these tiny creatures who churned through the soil all the time. In 1963, there was a theory that Stonehenge had been built as some sort of computer that predicts solar and lunar eclipses. Later, some proposed it was actually constructed as a monument to ancestors that had passed away. This theory says the permanence of its stones represented the eternal afterlife. The average sarsen you can find there weighs 25 tons, while the biggest one weighs around 30 tons. If you want to get an idea of how massive these stones really are, you can go behind the visitor center in the outdoor gallery to check out a replica sarsen stone. It's a true copy of a freestanding upright from one of the trilithons that are located in the inner horseshoe of the monument. There are 5 Neolithic houses at Stonehenge based on real archaeological evidence of houses found in that area. Each of them had stake-built walls and a chalk floor. Some even had furniture. There was also a lot of trash discovered, which means people in this area used to like celebrations and feasting. Research has shown that people lived in these houses for 50 to 100 years, around 4,500 years BCE, which was the time when the builders brought the sarsen stones to Stonehenge. During the time they were building Stonehenge, generations of people went through major changes themselves, from the Stone Age to the early Bronze Age. They were no longer as static and isolated. They started to travel and trade more, which means they communicated way more than their ancestors, even internationally. This is how they could have spread the word about Stonehenge, and it's also when the whole mystery and fascination with the monument began.
Have you heard of Göbekli Tepe? It's an ancient site in Turkey that literally made historians rewrite history books. Over 11,000 years ago, a group of prehistoric humans crafted an enigmatic masterpiece that's even older than Stonehenge. Before its discovery, archaeologists believed that people didn't know about iron and weren't good at making pottery. They were sure that settled life only emerged with the need for agriculture. But Göbekli Tepe changed this belief. The place has revealed that it was the temple that paved the way for a settled life, not agriculture. Until this discovery, researchers believed that farming was the catalyst for sedentary living. Meet Professor Schmidt, the guy whose findings changed this theory. He managed to prove that hunter-gatherer communities laid the very foundations of this way of life. Back in the 1960s, other archaeologists visited the area, but they totally missed the mark. While surveying the region, they stumbled upon a hill with scattered limestone slabs and concluded it was just an old burial ground from medieval times. Little did they know that there was so much more to uncover. In 1994, Schmidt embarked on his own survey of prehistoric sites in the area. Surprise! He instantly realized he had discovered something truly extraordinary. Unlike the nearby flat and barren plateaus, Göbekli Tepe had a gently rounded top, rising 50 feet above the surrounding landscape. Funny enough, the translation of this place's name is Potbelly Hill. Schmidt was sure only humans could have made something like this. Those broken limestone pieces that were mistaken for gravestones turned out to be way more exciting. It was like stumbling upon a hidden treasure. The pieces took on a whole new meaning, and Schmidt with his team was about to dive into the secrets waiting beneath the surface. To their surprise, they found no traces of a settlement. No hearths for cooking, no houses, and none of those adorable clay figurines commonly found in nearby sites of similar age. However, they uncovered that those ancient people used tools like stone hammers. So, Schmidt and his team put their heads together and took a wild guess at the age of Göbekli Tepe's stone structures. Their estimation got backed up by some limited carbon dating done right at the site. The ancient vibes of this place were finally starting to make sense. It was like a puzzle slowly coming together. You may think that back then, people didn't have special tools to create something as cool as Göbekli Tepe. Not true. Turns out, these prehistoric folks used flint tools instead of fancy metal chisels. They were also skilled at chipping away softer limestone and crafting pillars right on the spot. Afterward, they carried the pillars a short distance to the summit and placed them upright. Once the stone rings were complete, they covered them with layers of dirt. Over time, they added new rings, and voila! You've got a cool hill to impress people in the future. During their first year of excavation, the team went through 15,000 pieces of animal bones from wild creatures. These people didn't have pet animals or grow their own food. They hunted wild animals for their meals. But things were about to change, because the place had everything they needed to start farming. Scientists say they had wild sheep and wild grains that could be domesticated. And guess what? Just 20 miles away, geneticists found evidence of the world's oldest domesticated strains of wheat at a prehistoric village. These amazing findings have completely changed how we view civilization. In the past, experts believed that people needed to learn how to farm and settle in one place before they could build temples and develop complex societies. But guess what? Schmidt's research flips that idea on its head. He claims that the incredible effort put into constructing these astonishing structures actually set the stage for the development of advanced societies. It means that societal and cultural changes happened before agriculture. Schmidt has this fascinating hypothesis about Göbekli Tepe. He thinks it could have been a special burial site where people left their loved ones. And here's the twist. The burial site was adorned with fancy statues and symbols representing deities from the spiritual realm. The idea that Göbekli Tepe could have served as a sacred place adds another layer of complexity to the whole story. While the site's true purpose may remain elusive, Schmidt's insights invite us to consider the profound interplay between life and the afterlife, and the deep reverence ancient hunter-gatherer societies may have had for their departed ancestors. Now let's talk about the stars of the show, the mesmerizing T-shaped columns that dominate Göbekli Tepe. These mysterious structures range from 10 to 20 feet tall and most likely represent stylized human figures. But one figure stands out from the rest, the three-dimensional lion relief. This depiction really fires up our imagination. Why? Because it hints at the possibility that lions roamed Anatolia during the Neolithic period. These standing stones are arranged in circles and placed in rectangular pits. Each circle has a similar setup. Two big T-shaped pillars in the center, surrounded by slightly smaller ones facing inward. Talk about a stylish arrangement. These towering pillars reach a whopping 16 feet and weigh between 7 and 10 tons. Some pillars are plain and simple, while others are like works of art with intricate carvings. Foxes, scorpions, and vultures come to life, crawling and twisting on the pillars' sides. But it's not just animals depicted on these stones. Some pillars have abstract shapes representing humans, and even small carvings of clothing items. Some of them even have belts. Now, there's one pillar that stands out from the rest like a rock star, This super-old stone pillar suggests that a comet crashed into Earth. It happened during a chilly period that lasted about 1,000 years. Previous studies examining Greenland ice cores hinted at this comet theory, but now the carvings at Göbekli Tepe prove it right. The carvings on the pillars are like a historical comic strip. They even show a headless human figure. Researchers fed the images into a computer and discovered their connections to constellations, indicating that this temple might have been an ancient observatory. It's like our ancestors were trying to document this cataclysmic event in their own unique way. Archaeologists have been excavating and researching Göbekli Tepe since the mid-1990s, peeling back layers of history and providing us with a deeper understanding of the intricate relationship between various elements. They have no plans to stop the whole process for another 150 years. Who knows what else they'll find? You see, Göbekli Tepe has been labeled purely as a ritual site with no signs of domestic activities. We were led to believe that the absence of water meant it couldn't support semi-sedentary communities. But scientists believe it's time to shake things up and approach Göbekli Tepe with fresh eyes. It's time to question what we believed before and use new evidence and different ways of thinking. Like, there might have been a group of people living in the area who didn't stay in one place all the time. They moved around a bit but still had their own civilization, living in the area semi-sedentarily. Göbekli Tepe is not just home to a single temple, but an astounding collection of over 20 ancient structures. As archaeologists delve into the depths of this wonder, they are unraveling its unique layout, featuring two prominent focal points at the heart of each establishment, complemented by smaller structures and dividing walls. What's even crazier is that in this area, there are over 200 obelisks, which are narrow tapering monuments.
Now picture this. You're watching a volcano erupt, which is a scary view by itself. But suddenly, you notice ominous bright flashes lighting up the sky over the volcano. It takes the nightmarishness of the experience to a whole new level. One cause is static electricity, which occurs when dense ash particles rub together not very high above the ground. The other source of volcanic lightning is high above the surface, near the stratosphere, where chaotically moving ice crystals set free powerful jolts. Salar del Uyuni feels like you're standing on top of a large mirror, but it's actually a salt flat of more than 4,000 square miles. It's located in Bolivia, South America's highest elevated country. This natural mirror is a remnant of prehistoric lakes that had evaporated a long time ago. Even though it may look flat, GPS technology proved that some of the landscape has some little defaults that are all less than an inch small. The place is so bogged that it has around 10 billion tons of salt. If you get there at the right time, some of the nearby lakes overflow with a small layer of water, which acts as the mirror of the sky. Many locals extract salt and lithium from there. Don't forget to pass by the world's first salt hotel when you visit. You can find a real rainbow mountain in Peru. Scientists still can't explain it. The colorful peak is hard to reach, but seeing the blue, red, green, yellow, and pink colors in nature is something to remember. Now, what looks like frozen flying saucers is, in fact, pockets of highly flammable and combustible methane gas. Trapped underwater, it forms psychedelic landscapes and stunning patterns. Typical for northern lakes, such as Lake Abraham in Alberta, Canada. These bubbles appear when dead animals, leaves, and plants fall into the water and get consumed by bacteria. These bacteria later excrete methane gas. Wow, I can smell it from here. In late March 2018, Eastern Europe witnessed an event as beautiful as it was spooky. Skiers glided down tangerine slopes under the red-tinted sky. Puzzled and excited, people describe this experience as walking on Mars or skiing down sand dunes. But however mysterious this phenomenon seems, it has a disappointingly simple explanation. The sponsor of the extraterrestrial landscape was a powerful sandstorm that had arrived from the Sahara Desert. This storm had brought along dust, sand, and pollen particles that colored the snow orange. It's not a one-time natural phenomenon. Meteorologists say that orange snow covers the lands of Eastern Europe at least once every 5 years. Meanwhile, don't eat the orange snow. On February 20th and 21st of 2018, people in the northeastern part of the U.S. experienced one of the most extraordinary weather events of recent times, and it was a heat wave. Yep, in February. In fact, it was the most impressive winter heat wave since official weather records started in the 1800s. For example, in Freiburg, Maine, people were taking off their coats after the temperature had risen to a baffling 70 degrees Fahrenheit. In Fitchburg, Massachusetts, confused people put on sandals when they saw the temperature outside 80 degrees. The same was happening in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where the temperature reached 83, and in Wells, Maine, where the thermometer showed 77 degrees. Now, around 11,000 years ago, in present-day Turkey, with no cities or metal tools whatsoever, some incredibly skilled craftsmen completed Göbekli Tepe. How they managed to chip and lift limestone blocks 3 times as heavy as a T-Rex, and what they symbolize is still unknown. Ooh. One mind-blowing fact about Devil's Tower in Wyoming, USA, is that scientists can't explain how it came to existence in the first place. You see, it's an 867-foot rock formation with walls so steep they're basically vertical. This piece of stone just arose amid the rolling plains of Wyoming with nothing like it for miles and miles around. So how is it that such a flat landscape could have suddenly given birth to something so tall? Theories abound, but nobody has the answer yet. Croatia's Plitvice Lakes National Park is a major tourist attraction and a World Heritage Site, with many unique animals and plants teeming around. It looks like an epic movie set, with infinite waterfalls flowing from every direction and the clear lakes all around. In the mid-1980s, a scuba diver discovered the Yonaguni Monument off the coast of Japan. Scientists are positive this collection of structures is thousands of years old, but they still can't decide if it's natural or man-made. In case it proves to be an ancient city, the new mystery is what lost civilization built it, and how did it make it to the bottom of the sea? The shape and formations of these rocks aren't a result of some human's work. They were created by intense volcanic eruptions. Scientists are still confused why the Giant's Causeway in Ireland is shaped in such a weird way. Back in 1812, for an unknown reason, an English farmer paid a local painter to remove tons of soil on a hillside and fill the contours with chalk. The painter ran away with the money, so the farmer had to pay a second time to get the Alton Barnes White Horse finished. Black Falls in Iceland get their name from the dark lava columns surrounding it. The base of the waterfall has sharp rocks. The entire structure was the inspiration for Icelandic architecture seen in some of their famous buildings. You can see hair ice in the forest on a humid winter night. Resembling cotton candy or a white hair wig, unusual ice crystals grow on rotting wood. Unfortunately, this beauty melts as soon as the sun comes up. Only recently have scientists discovered what creates hair ice. All this time it was, are you ready? Fungus. Yep. It allows the ice to form super thin hairs and helps them to support this form throughout the night. When this particular type of fungus isn't present, instead of fragile hair, ice forms a crust-like structure. Now, one of the most common causes of wildfires is lightning from thunderstorms. But have you ever heard of a wildfire that triggered a thunderstorm? Well, now you know. It happened on May 11, 2018, not far from Amarillo, Texas. Then, the super powerful Mallard Fire not only created a massive dense cloud high in the air, its heat also caused a violent thunderstorm that later dumped tons of quarter-sized hailstones 60 miles away in Wheeler County, Texas. Stonehenge is the weirdest landmark of Nebraska. Its author studied the real Stonehenge and created his own version out of old cars as a tribute to his father. Some cars stand like monoliths. Others are connected into arches. When asked why he did all this, the creator of the construction said, "Why not?" Another Stonehenge look-alike was found on the bottom of Lake Michigan in 2007. There's a group of rocks in a circle and carvings of a mastodon. This beast ceased existing over 10,000 years ago, so the carving has to be older than that. Its location is kept secret from the public. Good luck finding it. Canada's Hudson Bay is probably the only place in the world where gravity is indeed lower than anywhere else on the planet. Even skeptics can't smirk at it because the difference has been measured with precision equipment. So does it mean that the gravity here is as low as, say, on the moon? Unfortunately, or is it luckily, I'm not sure yet. The difference is minuscule. The exact value is 0.005 or 1/200%. You won't be able to feel it even if you try your hardest, but it's still there. Scientists say this anomaly exists because of the ice sheet that covered the area about 10,000 years ago. It compressed the rocks so much that they still can't fully recover, shifting the gravitational field in Hudson Bay. Sometime in the future, though, the gravity will return to normal in this area as well. In 2010, fossilized fish were uncovered 250 miles west of the Nile River, where the Sahara Desert was as arid as ever. This chance finding led scientists to believe there could have been a sea where the Sahara is now. So they conducted a geological survey of the area, and it yielded unexpected results. They found evidence of something huge under the sands, and it wasn't part of any sea at all. For several months, the research continued with GPS equipment on land, and later, when all the ground data was collected, scientists took a look at the area from a satellite. The view was astounding. It turned out there was an enormous basin underneath the desert, with another, smaller one nearby. Along the shores of these basins, ancient human settlements had been found previously, and now the researchers finally had the answer as to why exactly they had chosen those spots to live. There had been a lake of impressive proportions, over 42,000 square miles of fresh water in total, about half the size of Lake Michigan. Gwajan volcano in Indonesia is not your ordinary lava-belching mountain. Instead of producing black smoke and red lava, as most volcanoes do, this eccentric guy lets out a blue flame and electric blue lava. This phenomenon occurs because the volcano contains some of the highest levels of sulfur in the world, and when the sulfuric gases interact with scorching air and get lit by the molten lava, they start to turn blue. Unfortunately, you can see this mesmerizing sight only at night, but you can smell it all day long. By the way, the world's largest acid lake is also located inside this crater. The Dead Sea has a high concentration of salt and minerals compared to other seas, even though it's technically a lake. Swimming is almost impossible, but people go there for the natural chemicals for the body. Floating on the surface is a great way to relax. This ancient body of water got its name because no macroscopic organisms can live there since it's 9.6 times saltier than oceans. Only a few bacteria and fungi can be found enjoying the salt. It's also Earth's lowest elevation on land at 1,400 feet below sea level. An underground crystal cave exists in Mexico, and it looks like some interstellar world. It's roughly 1,000 feet beneath the surface, with each spike measuring up to 35 feet in length and weighing up to 55 tons. These are some of the largest crystals in the world. Luscantire Beach is an endless strand of white sand dunes and azure water. But don't let the tropical vibes fool you. It's located in Scotland. That's why it mostly looks like this during May and June only. In December, the place gets only an average of 1 hour of sunshine per day, making it way more dramatic and monochrome. The Georgia Guidestones is a collection of giant stones in a star pattern. It has inscriptions in 8 languages, including Hindi, Chinese, and Swahili. It also has an astronomical calendar finished in 1980 and was built to last centuries. No one knows who built it or why. All the way over in sunny California is Sequoia National Park, home to the giant forest. It's been around for thousands of years. More than 8,000 of these colossal trees rule the land, including 10 of the largest living plants in the world. The General Sherman sequoia is estimated to be up to 2,700 years old and is recognized as the world's largest known living tree by volume. The famous stone heads of Easter Island have been around for hundreds of years. No one knows exactly why they were built. Some scientists think that local people believe the statues would make the soil more fertile. Soil analysis proved the heads did their job well. It's the best agricultural spot on the island. The chemical composition of the ancient hot springs in Pamukkale, Turkey, makes the water pouring over the edge look magical. They're not only good for cleansing your body, but the mind too. All the way in Saudi Arabia is a rock sliced perfectly in the middle with two pieces sitting parallel. What makes Al Nasla so unique is that it wasn't artificially done, but is a result of nature's work over the years. Now, this glacier may look like someone dropped tons of red paint in the middle of Antarctica, but it's actually the natural color. Blood Falls is a result of extreme salted water mixed with iron oxide, giving out this eerie vibe in the middle of nowhere. In early May 2018, New England observed one of the scariest and most dangerous phenomena ever, a super long-track tornado. The frightening natural phenomenon started not far from Charleston, New Hampshire, and traveled toward the town of Webster in Merrimack County. It took the tornado 33 minutes to cover 36 miles and become the third on the list of the longest track tornadoes in New England. In the Philippines, you can swim in some of the most crystal-clear waters and discover an underwater world below you in the province of Palawan. The municipality of Coron has white sandy beaches with many small boats riding through the many amazing sceneries. Tristan da Cunha is a small volcanic archipelago in the Atlantic, with the only neighboring cities of Buenos Aires, Argentina, and Cape Town, South Africa. It takes 7 days by ship to get to this unique place. If you want to escape from the rest of the world, staying with the 280 locals will make you feel like you're away from everything. During the first week of January 2018, unusually cold weather in the northeast United States froze the Atlantic Ocean in North Falmouth, Massachusetts. What's more, the ocean was frozen so thoroughly that people were walking on the waves. Now, that's obviously something you don't see every day. Red sand is what makes this beach unique and why tourists flock to Tianjin, China. A red-colored plant called a Sueda salsa dwells in the saltwater. The whole beach is covered in red, with only the top layer of the sea visible. If there ever was a thing that said, "I defy gravity" out loud, it's the Stone of Damasco in Argentina. The huge 300-ton boulder stands precariously on the edge of a cliff and rocks a little bit from side to side in the wind. People even checked it by putting glass bottles under one of its edges. They exploded with another movement of the rock. Unfortunately today, you can't see this wonder of nature as it was a century ago. In 1912, the boulder suddenly dropped from its perch, which it had occupied for literally hundreds of years. The people of the nearby town of Tandil were so sad about this event that 95 years later, in 2007, they decided to restore the stone. They made a plastic replica of the rock and put it on the same spot and even in the same position. So, even today, coming by Tandil, you can see its famous balancing boulder. More of a symbol now, of course, because it's no longer rocking and only weighs 9 tons, but instantly recognizable nonetheless. Socotra is an alien-like island off the coast of Yemen in the Indian Ocean, with one of the most unique trees ever seen. It's called the dragon tree, and it can only be found on this amazing island. In 2008, it was labeled as a World Heritage Site. If you ever see a tight burning column of air, don't panic, it's not the end of the world. The creepy combination of whirlwind sounds and scorching inferno means that you have crossed paths with a fire tornado, also known as fire twister or fire whirl. This dangerous phenomenon occurs mostly during wildfires. These fires create a big area of super hot air just above the ground. When this scorching air gets mixed with the cooler air higher up, it results in a whirlwind that churns up burning debris and flames. The most powerful firenados can stretch hundreds of feet into the air. The House of Mystery in Gold Hill, Oregon, amazes its visitors with gravity-defying effects. You can't stand straight there, always leaning to the side and having to hold on to something for balance. Balls roll upwards. There's also a broom that stands perfectly still wherever you put it, unlike virtually everything else in the shack. The local Native American tribes called this place the Forbidden Ground, even before the house was built there, and they avoid approaching it. The owners of the shack, though, decided to turn it into an attraction, and they succeeded. They created an atmosphere of mystery around the place, and spread the news about it in newspapers and later on the internet, and voila! A perfect anomaly is made. In fact, it's no more than a curiosity, a human-made optical illusion that tricks your eyes and other senses. Now, if you travel to the Philippines, Indonesia, or Papua New Guinea, you'll have a chance to see some of the most unusual and cheerful trees in the world. The trunk of the rainbow eucalyptus looks as if it had been painted orange, green, red, purple, yellow, brown, blue, hey, you name it. Some trees are so bright that they seem artificial. The rainbow eucalyptus regularly sheds strips of bark, which reveals a bright green layer underneath. A bit later, this green layer gradually changes its color, and since the shedding happens at a different time in different places on the trunk, the tree starts to look multicolored and very attractive. Yemen is home to the oldest skyscrapers in the world and the oldest metropolis. The ancient city of Shabam is considered to be the Manhattan of the desert, due to the collection of mud buildings popping out of the desert floor. It used to be a caravan stop during ancient times.